Athena and Poseidon were fighting. Both wanted to be the patron of Athens. Poseidon drove his trident into the rock. Salt water burst forth. It was a show of force, the Lord of the Sea saying, "I am here." Athena did not destroy anything. She did not shatter anything. She bent down to the earth and planted an olive tree. The city chose the tree. Today, there are roughly 3 trillion trees on Earth, more than 400 per person. You walk past them every day, sit in their shade, eat their fruit, and feel nothing. But thousands of years ago, your ancestors knelt before that tree. They named it. They believed they owed their lives to it. They believed cutting it down would tear the cosmos apart. And the strange part? You are still doing it. If you put up a Christmas tree, you are continuing the ritual without knowing it. If you say, "touch wood," you are reaching for the tree spirit. If you pour olive oil, you are using Athena's gift. Nobody told you, but the tree never left. Why not a pyramid? Why not a river? Why not a mountain? Why a tree? This is not just a Greek myth. This is a choice civilizations made again and again throughout history. Whenever they built a world, they placed a tree at its center. Why? A pyramid also reaches toward the sky. A river also gives life. A mountain also connects earth and heaven. But none of them captivated as many civilizations as the tree. And by the end of this video, we will understand why the tree, not the pyramid, not the mountain, not the river, became so universal. The Egyptians saw a pillar that held up the sky and said its essence was a tree trunk. The oldest oracle center in Greece was not a temple, it was a speaking oak tree. In Sumer, the first sacred object ever recorded was also a tree. A storm bird in its branches, a serpent at its roots, a night spirit in its trunk. Does that remind you of something? In our earlier video on Ra, Shamash, and Mithras, why every civilization chose the same god, we touched on this. Like the scene of Mithras and the bull, a raven above, a serpent below. Strange, isn't it? In the lost books of Ethiopia, beyond 7 mountains, a fragrant tree grew and its fruit promised immortality, but no creature had the right to touch it. Kabbala drew the map of existence. The map was shaped like a tree with 10 nodes and 22 paths. The Quran speaks of a boundary tree on the 7th heaven, a point beyond which even the Archangel Gabriel could not pass. In India, a tree was depicted with its roots in the sky and its branches hanging down to earth. Everything was reversed because the material world was merely a reflection. The Celts assigned 13 trees to 13 months, and their priest's name meant oak knowledge. The Maya planted a massive ceiba tree at the center of the world and called it the tree of our bodies. Different geographies, different eras, different beliefs, but all chose the same symbol, a tree. As I said at the start, why not a pyramid, not a river, not a mountain? Why a tree? Let us look together. Just as in our previous videos, we will examine how civilizations with different religions and cultures turned the same symbol into their own tradition, similar in some ways, different in others.
And our second question, who came first? Which civilization told the first story? Who drew inspiration from whom and added it to their own religion or belief? Or was anything added at all? If by the end of this video you have formed an opinion about who the original story belongs to, please do not hesitate to share it in the comments. Throughout the ancient world, the concept of sacred groves existed. The Roman writer Servius defined it: Lucus est arborum multitudo cum religione. A sacred grove is a group of trees with religious significance. In Olympia, Zeus's sacred grove, the Altus, was where the games were held. Celtic druids gathered in their oak groves. In Canaan, Asherah's places of worship were tree-filled sanctuaries. The sacred space, before it was architecture, was a group of trees. The temple was trunk before it was wall. Tonight, We trace the trail of this question, and the answer we find will be older than the tree itself. The oldest oracle center of the Greek world was not Delphi. Long before Apollo's famous temple, in northwestern Greece at Dodona, an oak tree was speaking. Zeus's oracle at Dodona was established in the 8th century BCE. Zeus's title there was Nios, the Flowing One, probably derived from the abundant springs in the area. In the Odyssey, we read that Odysseus came here to seek counsel from the high-leafed oak tree of the god. In some accounts, this oak tree spoke with a human voice. In others, it delivered messages through doves that landed on its branches. And in a third tradition, when the wind rustled the oak's leaves, the priests interpreted those sounds as prophecy. A bronze cauldron was suspended nearby. When the wind blew, a rod beside it would strike the cauldron and produce a sound. Interpretations varied according to the intensity of the sound and the wind. But the most striking detail lies in the tree's priests. Homer calls them seloi, unwashed-footed men who slept on the ground. This was not neglect, but a rule. Priests who never broke contact with the earth, because the soil, that dark realm where the tree's roots extend, was seen as the source of prophetic knowledge. The tree's roots were in the ground, the priest's feet were on the ground, both drawing from the same source. One source describes this as an ascetic rule, maintaining connection to the world through contact with the earth. But in most traditions, prophecy was done by looking upward, stars, sun, moon. At Dodona, prophecy came from below, from the soil, from the roots, rising through the trunk of the tree. And this knowledge arrived in 3 forms: the rustle of the leaves, the murmur of the spring, the sound of the bronze cauldron. Dodona's oak was more than a tree, it was a channel of communication between sky and earth, God and human, the unknown and the known. And Dodona was not alone. There was also Olympia, birthplace of the Olympic Games, where Zeus had a sacred grove, the Altis. Its very name meant grove. The ancient world's greatest sporting and religious festival began not inside a temple, but inside a cluster of trees. The sacred space was trunk before it was wall.
And in Greece, trees were not only tools of prophecy. The Greeks believed a spirit lived inside every tree, a dryad. But one type was special, the hamadryad. The hamadryad was born with the oak tree and ended with the oak tree. When the tree was felled, the hamadryad was lost to history. Tree and spirit were one, inseparable. The Greeks had made every tree a dryad, every spring a nymph. This was not just poetic imagination, it was a deep act of identification with nature. And Apollo, one of the most powerful gods of the Greek pantheon, was identified with the laurel tree. At his most important temple in Cyprus, his title was Hylates, god of the grove. In central Greece, he was worshipped as Apollo Daphnephoros, the laurel bearer. Laurel leaves were considered purifying because of their sweet aromatic scent. At Delphi, the temple entrance was swept with laurel branches every morning. Wreaths were hung, the daily practice of a purification ritual. At the Daphnephoria festival held in Thebes, a child whose mother and father were both alive led the procession. His closest male relative carried an olive log decorated with laurel branches, small bronze globes, and purple ribbons. It was a grand, colorful, sonorous procession. Bringing the tree to the city was bringing fertility to the city. And the source notes, tree-bringing festivals are also linked to other gods, including Hera and Dionysus. The ritual is older than the god it serves. Can a ritual be older than the god it serves? If rituals exist for gods, why does the ritual exist without one? Could it be that humans assigned the god to the tree rather than dedicating the tree to the god? Keep these questions in mind. They will come up again and again. Wait, Greece's tree tradition does not end there.
Beyond the western Mediterranean, across the ocean of Okeanos, there was a legendary garden, the Garden of the Hesperides. Here grew a tree that bore golden apples. A dragon guarded this tree. Strange, is it not? Dragon and gold, how many stories they appear in. The dragon's name was Ladon, standing watch without sleep, day and night. One of Heracles' 12 labors was to take these apples, and to take them he had to get past the dragon. The number 12 appears here as a labor. Just like dragon, just like gold, 12 appears in nearly every mysterious event. But that is a story for another night.
If this story sounds familiar, you are right. Because remember the Huluppu tree of Sumer? The tree Inanna planted in her garden, the one that could not grow because a serpent sat at its roots? Enoch's fragrant tree, no creature had the right to touch it. The Hesperides' golden tree is also guarded by a dragon. To reach the fruit of immortality, you need to pass a test, overcome an obstacle. In all three traditions, the tree gives something precious, but not everyone can reach it. There is always a guardian around the tree, and for some reason, a serpent or dragon is always the one guarding it. Think also of its presence in the story of Adam and Eve. And consider the Parthenon, Athens' most famous structure. On the west pediment, Athena and Poseidon stood face to face. Between them, that famous moment, the olive tree Athena had just drawn from the earth. Ancient Athenians saw this scene every day. The foundation of their city was a tree, and they never forgot it. But was this sacred tree tradition unique to Greece? On the opposite shore of the Mediterranean, in the Nile Valley, a much older tradition was giving a different answer to the same question. In Egypt, the tree was sacred in a way different from all other traditions. Here, rather than a single tree of life myth, we encounter a deep understanding of spirit attributed to trees. And this understanding is even more tangible than Greece's Hamadryad concept. According to the sources, in ancient Egypt, the spirit of a large tree was considered far more powerful than the spirit of a blade of grain or a patch of grass. In that belief, touching trees and breaking their branches could have dangerous and sometimes fatal consequences because a being lived in the tree. In southern Nubia and eastern Sudan, communities also treated trees with reverence. They believed the spirits dwelling in those trees could bestow favors upon them. Even in the earliest known periods of Egyptian civilization, plant cults stand out. Trees topped the standards of 2 Upper Egyptian nomes. Egypt's most striking scene on the subject of trees comes from the sycamore, a fig variety. Near Memphis, at the border of the desert, there grew a great sycamore tree. It was believed that a goddess lived inside this tree. This goddess was identified with Hathor very early on. From the Old Kingdom onward, one of Hathor's titles became Mistress of the Sycamore. The belief held that bird-shaped souls arriving from the city of the departed would find water and food beneath the sycamore tree. The goddess would shake the branches of the tree, and the souls would be nourished. Another source describes the same scene as follows. In the dreary regions of Amentu, 2 sacred trees were planted. From one of them, the sycamore fig, the sky goddess Nut gave the water of life to thirsty bird souls. In this telling, 2 separate goddesses, Hathor and Nut, are linked to the same tree. Both are beings who give life to souls. The tree is the goddess's home, and this home is simultaneously a source of nourishment. And Hathor's influence did not stay within Egypt's borders. According to the sources, Hathor was also worshipped beyond the traditional boundaries of Egypt and Nubia in Semitic West Asia, particularly in the city of Byblos. Byblos on the coast of Lebanon in the land of Canaan. Hathor was connected there with turquoise, malachite, gold, and copper, and especially with the scent of the myrrh tree. The The tree goddess crosses from Egypt to Canaan, and shortly we will see that in Canaan too, the inseparable bond between tree and goddess continues. Two cultural traditions looked at the same subject through different eyes. The Greeks saw a nymph in the tree, the Egyptians a goddess. The same fundamental belief, a superhuman being lives inside the tree, but in Egypt, this being was far more powerful, far more divine. And the sycamore was not the only sacred tree. The thorny acacia was also the dwelling of a goddess. According to the sources, the mother goddess Neith lived in the acacia tree. In Assyria, the same thorny tree was dedicated to Ashur as the tree of light. Acacia formed a line of sacred trees stretching from Egypt to Mesopotamia. And one of the most powerful symbols connected to these trees is the jed pillar. The jed is depicted as a bundle of cut plant stalks, a cult object made from an unidentifiable plant. It had its own priests, it accepted its own offerings, meaning the jed was not merely a symbol, but an active object of worship. And it was linked to Osiris from an early period, the god of vegetation, of the rebirth of plant life. When the Nile flooded, the earth came alive, plants emerged, Osiris returned. The raising of the jed represented precisely this moment. Some interpretations see the jed as a stylized tree trunk, with its stacked layers resembling the backbone of a cedar or acacia tree. And a noteworthy detail, the source states that the jed was linked to Osiris early on, but originally did not represent any god. In other words, the jed was a cult object that predated the god, just as the Daphnephoria festival in Thebes was older than Apollo. The laurel ritual was older than the god. The jed was older than the god. Two different cultures arriving at the same conclusion: tree-related rituals are older than the gods. One of Egypt's most important festivals was the ceremony of raising the jed pillar. Raising the pillar that holds the sky was the symbol of the cosmos returning to order. And there is another concept connected to this ceremony: Jedi. According to Hyperborean sources, the initiate, a person equipped with the knowledge of mysteries, was considered reborn by embodying the mystery of Osiris and received the title Jedi, meaning transformed immortal. The trunk of the tree represented both the cosmic pillar, the structure holding up the sky, and the spiritual transformation of the individual. The tree held up both the cosmos and the person.
This brings us to an interesting question. If the tree sheltered spirits and goddesses, if it fed the souls of the departed, and if its trunk held the cosmos together, then the tree itself is an instrument of order. To plant it is to establish order. To cut it down is to disrupt order. The oldest and most dramatic version of this concept was written in a civilization far older than Egypt, in Sumer. This is one of the most important parts. Its importance lies in the fact that it is recorded. This story gives us perhaps the clearest clue as to why the tree was so important in every civilization. According to the Sumerian texts, in the first days of the world, when heaven and earth had just been separated, a single tree was growing on the bank of the Euphrates River. The south wind uprooted this tree and left it to the current of the water. Inanna, one of the most powerful goddesses of the Sumerian pantheon, queen of heaven and earth, rescued this tree from the water and planted it in her sacred garden. The first moments of the world, everything still taking shape, and the first sacred act is rescuing and planting a tree. Not building a temple, not carving a statue, planting a tree. And the one doing this is not an ordinary human. It is one of the most powerful figures in the pantheon of the gods. Inanna's motivation is also interesting. According to the text, she planned to make a throne and a bed from the tree's trunk, meaning the tree was the raw material of both sovereignty and fertility. The sacred tree was the source of sacred power. Keep this in mind because we will see the same priority in other traditions. But years passed and the tree did not grow because the Anzu bird, the herald of the storm, had nested in its branches. In its roots, a serpent had settled, described in the texts as a being no one dared to uproot. And in its trunk, Lilith, the spirit of the night winds, had made her home. This detail is important. A tree with three zones: branches, trunk,
roots, and in each one a different being. Branches are the sky, roots the underworld, trunk this world. When a chaos force settles in each layer, the tree cannot grow. When cosmic order stops, life stops too. We will encounter this structure again and again in the sections ahead. Inanna asked the hero Gilgamesh for help. Gilgamesh drove the serpent away. He chased the Anzu bird to the mountains. He banished Lilith to the desert. The tree was finally free. Inanna had a throne and a bed fashioned from its trunk, symbols of sovereignty and fertility. Gilgamesh was given a puku from the tree's root, a miku from its branch, probably ritual instruments, perhaps musical tools. The source notes that the exact nature of these objects is debated, but that their ritual function is certain.
Do not forget this detail. When the tree is purified, it does not go to waste, it transforms. It becomes an instrument of sovereignty, a throne, an instrument of fertility, a bed, an instrument of ritual, an instrument. The tree is both raw material and sacred object, and there is no boundary between the two. In Greece, laurel branches were tools of purification. Wreaths were hung at temple entrances. In Egypt, the sycamore tree fed the souls of the departed. The acacia was the goddess's home. In Sumer, the tree is directly the raw material of sovereignty and ritual. Every civilization is not merely consecrating the tree, it is extracting concrete functions from it. I have to admit, what struck me most while reading this text was not the tree itself, but its structure. The tree is a miniature of the cosmos. Roots are the underworld, trunk is the world we live in, branches are the sky. When the forces of chaos, serpent, storm bird, night spirit, disrupt this order, growth stops. When order is restored, the tree performs its function: throne, bed, ritual instrument. In other words, the sacred tree is not an ornament, but a mechanism that extracts concrete function from cosmic order. Egypt's Djed pillar held up the sky, Dodona's oak established communication between heaven and earth, and now in Sumer, the tree appears before us as a living model of cosmic order. In Egypt, the tree is the goddess's home. In Sumer, it is the object the goddess protects. In both cases, goddess and tree are an inseparable pair. But did this tree symbol remain confined to the Mediterranean and Mesopotamia? No. In the land of Canaan, today's Israel, Lebanon, Syria, it underwent an even more surprising transformation. In the land of Canaan, the tree is no longer a ritual object or a cosmic model. The tree is the goddess herself. Her name is Asherah, consort of El, the chief god of the Canaanite pantheon. The sources refer to her with the titles Mother of the Gods and Queen of Heaven. And here is a critical detail. Asherah was typically represented by an erected tree trunk or a living tree. Her places of worship were sacred groves, clusters of trees. In Servius's definition, a lucus, a group of trees bearing religious significance. In Egypt, the goddess lived inside the tree. Hathor was the mistress of the sycamore. Neith was the inhabitant of the acacia. In Sumer, the boundary blurs. Is the tree the goddess's home or the goddess's body? When it comes to Asherah, the line between the two is almost non-existent. But the story takes a very interesting turn here. In 1975, at the ruins of Kuntilit Ajrud on the Sinai Peninsula, an inscription was found. The inscription read, "Yahweh and his Asherah." Stop for a moment and think about what this means. Does it mean that the singular God of the Hebrew tradition once had a consort? The archaeological evidence suggests so. Before the transition to monotheism's concept of one God, the cult of Yahweh and the cult of Asherah may have existed side by side, even intertwined. Even the Hebrew sacred texts confirm this indirectly. They speak repeatedly of the Israelites erecting Asherah poles, those sacred tree trunks, and of the prophets forbidding it. If no one was doing it, why would you forbid it again and again? The thing that is forbidden is the thing that is widespread. If this information surprised you, you are not alone. This debate continues in the academic world today. There is no full consensus among scholars on what the Kuntilat Adrud inscription means, but the archaeological evidence is there and it cannot be ignored. Place this alongside the data from previous sections. In Egypt, Hathor was mistress of the sycamore. Neith lived in the acacia. In Sumer, Inanna rescued the Huluppu and planted it in her garden. In Canaan, Asherah is represented by a planted tree. 3 neighboring civilizations, all 3 with a powerful goddess figure, and in all 3, this goddess is inseparably connected to a tree. Coincidence? Or is there a flow of tradition between them? Our sources do not conclusively answer this question, but the pattern cannot be ignored. And the acacia appears here again. In the Hebrew tradition, the valley of Shittim, Valley of Acacias, is an important nameplace. Joshua set out from this valley toward the Promised Land. The acacia is the home of Neith in Egypt, the tree of light in Assyria, and the name of a sacred geography in the Hebrew tradition, one species of tree linking 3 civilizations. And at this point, we turn to a book most of you have never heard of, 1 Enoch, considered sacred by the Ethiopian Church, but not canonical in most Christian and Jewish traditions, an ancient text. This text contains what may be the most striking version of the tree symbol. Enoch embarks on a celestial journey. Angels show him the secrets of the universe. He reaches 7 magnificent mountains, and these are not ordinary mountains. They are massive structures made of gold, silver, and precious stones. On the summit of the 7th, a fragrant tree stands. Enoch's description is as follows. There was a tree I had never smelled. None were like it. It smelled more beautiful than anything. Its leaves, its blossoms, its wood never withered. Its fruit resembled clusters of dates. Michael's answer is revealing. No creature has the right to touch this tree until the great day of judgment. But when that day comes, the fruit of this tree will be given to the chosen. It will be planted in the north in a sacred place near the house of the eternal king, and they will draw its fragrance into their bones and live as long as the days of their ancestors.
It is impossible not to pause at this passage, because in Canaan, the tree was the goddess's body, accessible, touchable, worshipped. In Enoch, the tree is a promise, immortality made tangible. But this promise cannot be reached today. There is a boundary, a waiting period, a judgment. In Sumer, the tree had to be cleared of chaos forces. In Enoch, you must pass through judgment. In both cases, reaching the tree is a right, and this right must always be earned. And does the idea of the untouchable tree take you somewhere? Because in the next section, we will see that Kabbala took this tree and made it entirely abstract. The physical tree became a diagram, a map, a schema. In our previous videos, we looked at a different dimension of Kabbala, but there was something we did not see in that video, the Sephiroth tree itself. Kabbala's most recognized image is a tree, but this is not a tree whose branches reach to the sky or that bears fruit. It is a map, a schema showing how divine energy flows from its source into the world. And this map is the most abstract transformation of the concrete trees we have seen so far. 10 Sefirot, 10 divine attributes, form the nodes of this tree. At the top, Keter, the crown, pure potential, absolute unity beyond human comprehension. Above Keter is Ein Sof, the boundless, the infinite, the undefinable. But Ein Sof is not even part of the tree. It is beyond the tree, just like the realm beyond Sidrat al-Muntaha, the point where comprehension ends. At the bottom, Malkut, the kingdom, our physical world, the reality we can touch. And between them, 8 more Sefirot: wisdom, understanding, mercy, strength, beauty, victory, glory, foundation. The descent from Keter to Malkut is the process of divine energy condensing into matter, from pure light to physical reality, from the infinite to the finite, from the unknown to the known. But here is where we encounter Kabbala's genius. The 10 Sefirot are not a list, they are a tree structure. Every Sephirot is connected to the others. 22 paths link these nodes together, and these 22 correspond to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So this tree is simultaneously a map of language, the anatomy of creation. No longer roots, trunk, and branches, but nodes, paths, and connections. The tree has become a network. Letters form the roads, Sefirot form the intersections, and to walk this map is to reach divine knowledge. At Dodona, knowledge was obtained by listening to the rustle of oak leaves. In Enoch, the tree's fruit promised immortality. In Kabbala, the tree is made abstract. No leaves, no fruit, nodes and paths. Knowledge no longer falls from the tree, it is sought by walking within the tree's structure. The tree has become a thinking tool. And there is also the reverse side of this tree. Qliphoth, the shells, the dark mirror of the Sephiroth tree, a shadow force corresponding to each Sephirah. Against Keter stands Talmiel, dual-headedness. Against Malkut, the realm of Lilith. What struck me most while reading the sources was this symmetry, light and shadow, order and chaos, two faces of the same tree. Go back to the Huluppu, a bird in the branches, a serpent in the roots, a night spirit in the trunk. Lilith. This name persists. She sat in the trunk of the Huluppu in Sumer. Thousands of years later, in Kabbala's dark tree, the Qliphoth, she still holds her place. Same figure, different era, different language, but on the same dark side of the same tree. Some names never fade. This pattern can no longer be dismissed. The Greeks saw the tree as a tool of prophecy and purification. The Egyptians made it a pillar holding up the sky and fed the souls of the departed beneath it. Sumer described it as a model of cosmic order. Canaan made it the goddess's body. Enoch, a promise of immortality. Kabbala, a map of existence. As the tree grows, its meaning grows too. Each civilization takes it one step further into abstraction, and now we arrive at the most comprehensive stop in this growth, not a single tree, but an entire tree cosmology. In the Quran, the tree is not a single symbol. It appears in 3 different dimensions, and each carries a different cosmic function. This resembles none of the traditions we have seen so far, because instead of a single tree, there is an entire tree cosmology. Other traditions chose one tree and loaded it with meaning. Islam placed 3 trees and assigned each to a different layer of cosmology. And let us first note, the Quran also exalts the tree independently. Surah At-Tin begins by swearing by the fig and the olive, by the fig and the olive. The olive tree appears again in Surah An-Nur, a lamp lit from a blessed olive tree, the tree as the source of light. In Greece, Athena's olive tree was the foundation of Athens. In the Quran, the olive tree is a metaphor for divine light. The same tree in 2 different traditions, and in both it is associated with the highest values. First, Sidrat al-Muntaha, the boundary tree. Surah An-Najm describes a scene. During the night journey, the Prophet Muhammad ascended to the 7th heaven, and there he encountered a tree, Sidrat al-Muntaha. Tafsir sources explain this name as the final boundary, or the utmost limit, the absolute frontier that the created beings can reach. Even Gabriel does not pass beyond this point. The angel of revelation stops. It was covered by that which covered it, says the verse. What covered it lies beyond human words. Note this, in Enoch, the tree was atop 7 mountains, and no creature had the right to touch it. In the Quran, the tree is on the 7th heaven and is the boundary even for Gabriel. 2 traditions separated by hundreds of years gave the tree the same function, the border where the reachable ends and the transcendent begins. And in both, the number is the same, 7. Enoch's 7 mountains, Islam's 7 heavens. The tree stands at the peak of the 7th layer, at the very last threshold. Second, Tuba, the tree of paradise. In tafsir sources, the word tuba means happiness or beauty. According to one narration, a branch of the tuba extends into every mansion in paradise, each branch offering a different fruit, a different blessing. The tree is the backbone of paradise itself. All of paradise is nourished by the branches of this single tree. Look at Egypt's sycamore from this perspective. Hathor would shake the tree's branches and bird-shaped souls were fed. Tuba performs the same function, but on a vastly greater scale. A single tree, the source of nourishment for all of paradise. The fruit of Enoch's fragrant tree was promised to the chosen. Tuba looks like the fulfillment of that promise. Third, Zaqqum, the tree of hell. Surah al-Isra calls it the accursed tree. Surah as-Safat describes its fruit. Its sprouts are like the heads of devils. Zaqqum is the exact opposite of Tuba. One offers blessings, the other torment. Kabbala's Sephiroth and Qliphoth duality, the tree of light and the dark shells, repeats here in an entirely different language, but with the same structural logic. Good and evil, two trees of the same cosmology. The Celts' Oak King and Holly King pairing also builds a similar structure, the light half and the dark half, but we will get to that shortly. So far, every tree we had seen carried a different function, but Islam's threefold structure brings all the previous ones together. Sidra is the boundary, just as Dodona's oak stood at a boundary point for prophecy, just as Kabbala's Keter stands at the top as incomprehensible unity. Tuba is the promise, like Enoch's fragrant tree, like the nourishing shade beneath Egypt's sycamore. Zaqqum is the warning, like the Huluppu's chaos forces, like Kabbala's Qliphoth. Three trees, three functions: boundary, promise, warning, all parts of the same cosmology. Is this structure exclusive to the Mediterranean and the Middle East? Thousands of kilometers to the east, in India, a very different tree awaits us, a tree that turns everything upside down. But first, notice this. In all 6 traditions we have seen, the tree shares one common attribute. The tree is never alone. It connects sky and earth, the living and the departed, the visible and the invisible. If a psychologist today were to diagnose such an archetype, they would call it the universal need for connection. Our ancestors embodied the need for connection in a tree, and we are still doing it in every family tree, in every social media metaphor of putting down roots, in every cypress planted at a gravestone. The tree symbol has not ended, it has merely changed its disguise. In the 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks of a tree, but this tree resembles none of the trees we have seen so far. Its roots are above, in the sky. Its branches are below, on earth. Every tree we have seen so far grew from the bottom up. Every civilization planted the tree in the ground and extended it toward heaven. Hinduism reverses everything, and that is why it is different, because it takes the same symbol and inverts its meaning. Its name is Ashvattha, the sacred fig tree, Ficus religicus. According to the source, it is considered especially sacred in India and is described as the dwelling place of Brahma. People pour water on this tree, place flowers and incense beside it. But the Ashvattha in the Gita is more than a botanical being.
Krishna's description is a metaphor. The tree's roots are above because its origin is divine. Its branches hang down because the material world exists as a reflection, a projection of the divine. And this tree's leaves are Vedic hymns. Knowledge is part of the tree itself. In Kabbala, 22 paths corresponded to Hebrew letters. In Celtic tradition, every tree had a letter in the Ogham alphabet.
In Hinduism, the leaves are hymns, 3 independent traditions, all 3 identifying the tree with language and knowledge. Every tree is also a library. But the source also shows us a much older layer of this tree. The Hindus knew a celestial version beyond the earthly Ashvattha, the indestructible Ashvattha spreading its branches in the 3rd heaven. From this tree dripped Soma, the elixir of immortality, Amrita, and beneath this tree, Yama, the god of the departed, and the Pitris, the ancestors, sat sipping the drink of immortality together with the gods. This detail is important. From Enoch's fragrant tree, fruit would be given to the chosen only after the day of judgment. In the Hindu tradition, the elixir of immortality is already flowing from the celestial Ashvattha, but only in the 3rd heaven, only for ancestors and gods. In both cases, the tree is the source of immortality, but ordinary mortals have no access to this source. The tree gives, but not to everyone. And one source draws another interesting connection. The Zend Avesta, the Zoroastrian sacred text, always speaks of 2 trees. 2 trees, one of life, one of knowledge. In the Zoroastrian tradition, the home tree, white Homa, is the source of the water of immortality, just as Amrita, the elixir of immortality, drips from the Ashvattha in the Hindu tradition. 2 neighboring traditions sharing the same concept, a heavenly liquid of immortality flowing from a celestial tree. Where have we seen this dual structure? Tuba and Zaqqum, Sefirot and Qliphoth, Oak King and Holly King. The expression of cosmic duality through trees is not the invention of a single tradition, it is a universal pattern. Every tree we had seen so far grew from the bottom up, roots in the ground, branches reaching toward heaven. Hinduism reverses this. The message is different. The material world is an illusion. The real is above, at the source. To cut the tree, in the Gita's words, to cut it with the sword of detachment, is to be freed from attachment. Until now, every civilization had blessed the tree. The Greeks purified with laurel wreaths. Sumerian Inanna planted the tree in her garden. Enoch wanted to draw the tree's fragrance into his bones. But Hinduism's message is different. Do not cling to the fruit. See the source. Let go of the branches. The tree is not a ladder. It is a warning. And now we move to an entirely different climate, an entirely different worldview, the most surprising stop on our journey. We began our journey in the Mediterranean and the Middle East, familiar territory. We moved to India. We saw a tree with roots in the sky. And now we arrive at the shore of the ocean, at the Celtic world. Here, the tree is not a symbol, not a goddess, not a metaphor. It is the calendar itself.
The Celtic tree calendar divides the year into 13 months, each month dedicated to a tree. It begins with the birch tree, the month of new beginnings. It continues with the rowan tree, the month of protection. Ash represents the cosmic connection, and so each month is defined by the qualities of a tree. Every tree has a letter in the Ogham alphabet, meaning time and language are linked through trees. You need to pause here. In Kabbala, 22 Hebrew letters corresponded to the 22 paths of the Sephiroth tree. In Celtic tradition, every tree also has an Ogham letter. Two traditions completely independent of each other, applying the same logic. Tree equals letter equals knowledge. Between the branching of the tree and the branching of language, humankind keeps finding a parallel. But the most striking figures in this calendar are two brother kings, the Oak King, lord of the light half of the year, the Holly King, lord of the dark half of the year. At the summer solstice, the Holly King takes the throne and the dark half begins. At the winter solstice, the Oak King prevails and the light half begins.
This cycle never stops. Every year, every season, light and darkness take turns ruling. You should recognize this pattern by now. In Kabbala, Sephiroth and Kiliphoth, trees of light and darkness. In the Quran, Tuba and Zaqqum, the tree of paradise and the tree of hell. The Zend Avesta's two trees. In Celtic tradition, Oak King and Holly King, the sun half and the night half. 4 continents, 4 languages, 4 ages, but all saying the same thing. The most natural representation of cosmic duality is a pair of trees, or 2 faces of the same tree. And there is one more tree, the hazel, the tree of wisdom. According to the source, 9 sacred hazelnuts fall into the well of wisdom. The salmon in the well eats these hazelnuts and gains all knowledge. Whoever eats this salmon learns the secrets of the universe. Knowledge is the tree's fruit, just as in Enoch the fruit was to be given to the chosen, just as in Kabbala knowledge passes through paths between the Sephiroth, just as in India the leaves are made of Vedic hymns. Every tradition also uses the tree as a storehouse of knowledge. Knowledge falls from the tree, flows from the tree, lives in the tree. And the word druid itself, the title of Celtic priests, means oak knowledge, a tradition bound to the tree down to its very words. Just as the Seloi priests of Dodona never broke their contact with the earth, the druids had embedded in their very nomenclature that they drew wisdom from the tree. Among the Greeks, Apollo was god of the grove, Hilates. The druids were oak knowledge, 2 European traditions independently defining their priests by the tree. And one source offers another striking detail. The druids consecrated oak trees. They would cross them with a horizontal bar. A horizontal bar was bound to the trunk of the oak, and sacred names were carved upon it. On the right branch, Jesus; on the central trunk, Taranis; on the left branch, Belinus. 3 god names distributed across the tree's 3 zones.
Pause. Look at the Huluppu, an Anzu bird in the branches, Lilith in the trunk, a serpent in the roots. In Sumer, the tree's 3 zones, 3 beings. In Celtic tradition, the tree's 3 zones, 3 god names. Thousands of years apart, 2 traditions doing the same thing, dividing the tree into 3 and assigning a different power to each section. In Sumer, these forces are chaos, invaders that halt the tree. In Celtic tradition, these forces are order, names that consecrate the tree, but the structure is entirely the same. This process turned the tree into a temple object, vertical trunk and horizontal bar, the shape of a cross. In the Maya section, we will speak of the possibility that the Christian cross was derived from the world tree concept, but in the Celtic world, tree and cross shape were already intertwined. The vertical reaches toward heaven, the horizontal embraces the 4 directions, whether ceiba or oak or cross. Sumer did not know the Celts. The Greeks had never heard of the Maya, but all chose the same form. And across the ocean, on the American continent, this pattern appears one final time. Maya cosmology gives the tree its most concrete role, and it does this completely independently, without any influence from the Old World. This detail is important, because there may have been a flow of knowledge between the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and India throughout history, but the American continent across the ocean is isolated. The tree symbol was not carried there, it was born there independently. According to the source, in Central America, the ceiba tree, the kapok tree, is greatly revered. In Maya cosmology, the world consists of 4 corners and a center. A tree is planted at each corner, 4 directional trees, and at the center, the 5th tree, Wakachan, a giant ceiba holding up the sky. The sky stands on this tree's branches. The underworld Xibalba is connected through this tree's roots. The ceiba's thorny trunk, a natural barrier preventing humans from easily climbing it. To climb the tree meant to cross between worlds, and this was not everyone's right. the Hesperides' dragon, the Huluppu's serpent, Enoch's prohibition, in every tradition, reaching the tree requires an obstacle. The Maya ceiba had placed this obstacle in the very nature of its trunk. Think of Egypt's Djed pillar, the pillar holding up the sky, the cosmic spine. The Maya ceiba serves the same function, thousands of kilometers away, thousands of years apart. The Djed was a stylized form made of cut stalks. The ceiba is a living, massive tree, but both do the same thing. They hold up the sky. The idea that a tree is what keeps the cosmos standing emerged independently, from the Nile Valley to the Yucatan Peninsula. In Mexican sources, this tree is called Tonacasuhuatl, the tree of our bodies. Sacred tree or tree of the gods? No, the tree of our bodies. The tree is identified with human bodily existence. In Sumer, the tree was the miniature of the universe, roots, trunk, branches representing the universe. In Mexico, the tree is the miniature of the person, or the person is the miniature of the tree.
And similar patterns emerge among other peoples of the Americas. Among the Omaha, there is the concept of the sacred pole, the central object uniting the cosmic tree with the four winds. This pole was the physical representation of the community's identity. People would gather around it. The community existed through its presence. Among the Yurukares and the Macobes, the tree is described as the place where paradise or humanity was born. Humans emerged from inside the tree. The tree is the origin of the human species. The tree is both origin and center, both starting point and support structure. And we need to stop here. In Sumer, the first sacred act was planting a tree. Inanna planted the Huluppu in her garden. In Mexico, the tree is the tree of our bodies. Among the Yurukares, humans were born from the tree. Three separate cultures identify human existence with the tree. The tree is humanity's origin, its home, and its body. And the source draws one more connection. In some interpretations, even the Christian cross is said to be derived from the world tree or tree of life concept. The vertical axis connects heaven and earth. The horizontal axis encompasses the four directions, whether ceiba, oak, or cross. The shape of the crucifix, some say, is the abstracted form of the world tree. The Maya's 5 trees, center plus 4 directions, form a plus sign following the same logic. The Celtic Druids created a cross shape by binding a horizontal bar to the oak, a vertical trunk and horizontal arm. The tree came before the cross, and the cross may be the geometric memory of the tree. This interpretation will not please everyone, I know, but I am not the source. Comparative mythology studies draw this connection. What do you think? Did the cross come from a tree, or is this resemblance just a coincidence? At this point, the time has come to ask the question, why a tree? Why a tree every time? Tonight, from Greece to Sumer, from Egypt to Kabbala, from Islam to India, from the Celts to the Maya, we saw the tree symbol of 10 different traditions. Between them lie thousands of kilometers and thousands of years, but all chose the same form. Why? Look at a tree. For a moment, truly look. What do you see? Its roots are invisible, underground, in the unknown. Its trunk is in the world, in the realm you can touch, that you can see. Its branches reach upward, in a direction you cannot reach but are aware of. A tree as it stands is already a cosmological model, underworld, earth, sky. No other natural object represents this 3-part structure so clearly. A mountain also reaches toward heaven, but a mountain's roots are not in the unseen. A river also gives life, but a river's branches do not reach toward the sky. And every civilization we saw used this 3-part structure. In Sumer, 3 beings sat in the Huluppu's 3 layers: branches, trunk, roots. Kabbala arranged its 10 Sefirot into 3 columns. The Celtic calendar divided the year into 2 halves, light and dark, but the tree carried both. The Maya's ceiba connected the sky with its branches and the underworld with its roots. The tree was the natural template for every cosmology we saw.
But we discovered something else, and this is the most important. There was always a guardian around the tree. In the Garden of the Hesperides, the dragon Ladon guarded the golden tree. In the Huluppu, a serpent, a storm bird, and Lilith occupied the tree. No creature had the right to touch Enoch's fragrant tree. Even Gabriel could not pass Sidrat al-Muntaha. The Celtic hazel was protected by a special creature. In every tradition, the tree was a guarded object, not open to everyone's access. Immortality, wisdom, cosmic order, to reach them, you had to cross a threshold. This pattern cannot be coincidence, and there is another pattern, the bond between tree and the goddess. In Egypt, Hathor was mistress of the sycamore. Neith lived in the acacia. Nut fed souls from the sycamore fig. In Sumer, Inanna rescued the Huluppu and planted it in her garden. In Canaan, Asherah was represented by a planted tree. In Celtic tradition, the tree calendar was connected to feminine principles. In Greece, the Hamadryad, the tree spirit, was a female figure. This bond between tree and the feminine principle appears independently in at least 5 traditions. But there is more. The tree grows. It is alive. It changes with the seasons. It sheds leaves, blossoms, bears fruit. In winter, it stands bare. In spring, it fills again. The most visible cycle of renewal in nature is found in a tree. In Egypt, Osiris was the god of vegetation. The Nile floods, plants come alive, the god returns. The ceremony of raising the Jed celebrated this renewal. In Celtic tradition, the Oak King and Holly King alternated in 6-month cycles. In Hinduism, the Ashvattha is unaffected by seasons because it is the celestial one, everlasting. Amrita drips from it. Every tradition saw the tree's cyclical nature, but each loaded a different meaning onto this cycle. And the tree nourishes. It gives fruit, provides shade, offers wood. The phrase tree of life is not a metaphor. The tree, in the most concrete sense of the word, gives life. In Egypt, Hathor left food and water from the sycamore's branches. In Islam, every branch of Tuba offered a different blessing. The fruit of Enoch's tree was the promise of immortality. In Celtic tradition, the hazel tree gave knowledge. Every tradition elevated the tree's capacity for giving to a cosmic level. The question is not, why did every civilization choose the tree? The question is, was there a better candidate than the tree? Roots descend into the unknown, the trunk stands in the present, branches reach toward what is hoped for. The tree is human existence itself, past, present, and future united in a single trunk. Today we call this fractal structure in biology. Large branches divide into smaller branches into leaves, leaf veins repeat the same branching pattern. Every part of the tree is a miniature of the whole. Mexico's Tonacachiawat, the tree of our bodies, says it best. The human body is a tree is a human body. The microcosm reflects in the macrocosm. Ancient people did not know this word, but they knew what they saw. And at the start of this video, we asked a question: can a ritual be older than the god? The answer is now becoming clear. Dodona's tree-bringing festivals were older than Apollo. The source says the ritual is older than the god. Egypt's Jed pillar originally did not represent any god. The connection to Osiris came later. What does this mean? Perhaps religions, gods, theologies all grew from the branches of that first tree. Perhaps humanity's first temple was not a building, but a tree, and all belief systems are different branches of that tree.
This is a bold thesis, I know, but the evidence from the 10 traditions we examined does not point in any other direction. The cult of the tree may have existed before the concept of God. Humans looked at the tree first, then saw the god inside the tree. Or did they already know the god and place it in the tree? We do not know the definitive answer, but the evidence we have seen points in one direction. The tree came first. I also asked at the start of the video, who does the first story belong to? Looking at the data, the right question is not who copied whom. Let us correct our question. The question is, were they all looking at the same tree, at the same roots, the same branches, the same shade, and each telling it in their own language? If you have formed an opinion by the end of the video, please do not hesitate to share it in the comments. Reading through these sources line by line, what struck me most was not the differences between civilizations, but their similarities. As the priests of Dodona listened to the voice of the oak without breaking their contact with the earth, as a Sumerian priest described the 3 layers of the Huluppu, as an Indian sage explained the inverted roots of the Ashvattha, as a Celtic druid drew wisdom from the oak, they were all looking at the same object. But what they saw was different, because the tree offered each of them the answer to their own question. Greece wanted purification. The tree gave its laurel leaves. Egypt wanted a pillar to hold up the sky. The tree offered the jed, fed the souls of the departed beneath the sycamore. Sumer wanted order. The tree gave a miniature of the cosmos. Canaan wanted a mother goddess. The tree offered its body. Enoch wanted immortality. The tree gave the promise of fruit. Kabbala wanted a map. The tree drew 10 Sefirot. Islam wanted a boundary. The tree set the point where even Gabriel would stop, placed a tree of paradise and a tree of hell. India wanted liberation from illusion. The tree turned itself upside down and said, "Cut me." The Celts wanted to understand the rhythm of time. The tree divided into 13 months. The Maya wanted an axis to hold up the sky. The ceiba stood at the center and said, "Our body." You can plant a tree. You cannot know how deep its roots go. You cannot control where its branches will reach, but you can touch its trunk, here, now, this moment. There are 2 paths. You can see the tree as a ladder growing from earth to sky, as Greece, Sumer, Enoch, and Kabbala did, or you can see the tree as a rope hanging from sky to earth, as India did. In both cases, the tree asks the same question: where are you? In the roots, in the trunk, or in the branches? Tonight, we saw 10 different traditions. They gave 10 different answers, but the question was always the same. And the strangest coincidence is this: none of them started out thinking a tree would be their first answer, but each of them, in the end, finished by planting a tree. At Dodona, an oak still rustles. In Sumer, a tree still wants to grow. In Kabbala, a map is still being drawn. Where are you? In the roots, in the trunk, or in the branches? Until next time, may your roots hold firm.